yes, everyone is an acorn. Will everyone step into that? Will they tell the stories? Certainly I think there's some lifetimes. So when you see someone who's like, they're so far from realizing their oak tree potential, they're in a lifetime where that isn't necessarily the agenda. The agenda is to come and experience homelessness and die of drug addiction. We judge that as wrong, as if we can see the soul's agenda in the full gamut of what it's experienced. Right? And what it wants to call in so that it can have the contrast.
Hello, Brandon, and welcome to the Dream Your Life podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to diving into the dream today.
Let's dive into this dream. Okay, so the first thing we always do here is we focus on gratitude. So Brandon, 3 things that you are grateful for today.
3 things that I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for health. I think health is the ultimate wealth. I'm grateful for my health, my family, and my friends, and well, I guess those 2 I'm kind of lumping together, so I could maybe 4. And the opportunity to be on your show and talk about, all the things that light us up.
Oh, right. This is just, that's one of the things, like every time I think about things I'm grateful for, I do the health thing first too, but then I'm like, I can't believe that this is what I get to do during the day, is talk about the things that I'm so curious about and so passionate about, and that is my livelihood. Like, that is so cool.
You're in a dream.
Yeah. So Brandon, can you tell us first who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about how you got here?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Brandon Beachum. I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia. So I currently live in Southern California, Los Angeles area. And I had a pretty typical upbringing, not a lot of crazy trauma, or, thankfully Virginia was a great place to grow up. And I was raised around 11, 12 years old. My father got very religious, and I'd always went to church with my grandmother. I spent a lot of weekends with her. And so then it became more of a like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night thing instead of once a week. Dad is super into it now, and we all go to church, and it's a big part of our lives. And it was interesting because I've always been like fiercely independent and sort of, but went down the path that my parents led me down. I ended up going to a Christian college in Tennessee, very, very conservative Christian kind of, it's non-denominational, but they're very Church of Christ. It's more prevalent in the South, and it's just very conservative Christian. Went to a school, ended up getting kicked out of that school for being one of the quote unquote bad kids, aka normal. And it was around soon after that, I moved to Nashville, and I met someone who claimed to have some intuitive or psychic ability. I had never come across anyone like that before. And she did some things and demonstrated some things that were really surprising to me, and a little like, whoa, hold on, maybe there's something to this. And that's when I started sort of opening my mind to something outside of what I was raised to believe, that, God is this judgmental, man on the throne who's has very specific ideas of what you should or shouldn't do. And if, you don't do them, you get punished. And that's, so I started exploring outside of it.
Can I just ask, like, what were some of these things that she did?
One of the biggest things that sticks out to me is I remember her saying that her and her friend could communicate telepathically. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Prove it. So they sit there and they're kind of staring at each other. And I remember that it's been a long time ago now. I think they even wrote down the word they were going to try and send to each other, which was brown. And the woman on the receiving end received it. And that came out, and I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm watching you. I didn't see you mouth it to each other. Like, it was definitely one of those moments that was kind of shocking. And then I started reading, and exploring, and I hung out with her for a few months, and there's other things that just kind of, like I said, opened me to the possibility. So I started reading, and remember reading this book, and it was about someone who could communicate with animals telepathically as well, and had this powerful experience of calling all these animals to him. So right after, now I'm in this heightened, excited state about the possibilities of these types of things. And I remember going to my room after reading about the guy with the animals and holding my hands out, and there was a moth in the corner of my room, and it was a 6-bedroom house with 6 people that I lived in. I was in the biggest room, so it was a far distance away, this moth, 30 feet, let's say. And I held my hands out like, okay, come land in my hands. And it immediately flew across the room and landed in the palms of my hands.
Whoa.
And now, granted, I've tried this many times since, it's never worked again. In that moment, though, I think it happened because Spirit wanted to show me, yes, this is real, And so I just continued down that path. And as I started to explore and read and open my, now this is, mid to late 1996 timeframe, somewhere around there, 96, 95, 96. And I remember early on in my journey, I read like the Conversations with God book series, if you're familiar with those.
Yeah, I just started listening to that.
They're amazing. I just had Neil Donald Walsh on as a guest on my podcast.
You
Positive
did?
Head.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And he's been I've been doing the Positive Head podcast for going on 9 years, and he's been at the top of my list of people that I really wanted to have on.
How
and
cool.
So speaking of manifesting, I just manifested that a few weeks ago. And so a lot of the concepts, though, I named those books because it's very much like realizing you're one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. It's all you. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself, and it's all you reflecting you back to you. And as I started to play with these ideas, it's sort of, I can only think, because it is a part of my dharmic path to do the work that I do, that it just was like, oh my gosh, of course this is how it's structured. This makes so much rational, logical sense. How is everyone not seeing this and kind of geeking out on it the way I was starting to? And I would talk to anyone who would listen, and people would be there like, what are you smoking? Or wow, that's interesting, and go about their normal life. This is once again, 20 plus years ago.
What exactly are you saying? Like, what were you sharing? What concepts were you talking about?
Sure. So just, and if you read those books or listen to the audio or what have you, or, they're repeating a lot of things that have been said by a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But essentially it's, as I referenced, we are all, there's only one of us listening to this broadcast right now. The consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form. The separation between us is illusory in nature. There's only one of us in the room. And I am the lead actor, director, star of my own private YOU universe, right? And so are you. And I'm a prop in your movie. So you're a vantage point from which the whole is experiencing itself. And so as you start to realize, and play with this concept, of course, that's when things get really, really interesting, and a lot of synchronicity and serendipity and spiritual breadcrumbs and so forth. So I was really going deep down that and just feeling it in every cell of my being.
But so what are you, sorry, and I don't want to get derailed on just this, but it's
nope, it's important.
Why and how? What does it actually mean that we're all one? Where did that oneness come from?
Yeah, what a question. So first off, I'll put it in this, of course, for our brains to our simple brains to fully comprehend the infinite, oneness is almost melts our brains, right? And I like to put it as it's relative truths. Or a divine dichotomy, two apparently contradictory things that are both true depending on the vantage point from which you are speaking. So you and I are separate. We can make an argument for that most people would agree with. You and I are one. We can make that argument, and there's many people that would agree with that, and maybe more that wouldn't. But it's a deeper truth. So they're both true depending on the vantage point from which you're speaking.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what does that mean? Wow, it's what's interesting about it is it's reflected everywhere in in science. It's reflected, science and spirituality are really doing a dance that it's like two sides of the same coin, right? So it's everywhere you look, it's all the same stuff. It's all made of light. It's all connected. It's, now we can see quantum entanglement. You can entangle two particles and you do something to one of them and the other one they can send to the moon. And if you do something to it here, that one will instantaneously change. Right. So we can see it in physics that, so it explains, you talk about psychic ability or intuitive ability. How many mothers have known when their child is in trouble or, had that intuitive hit? And it's because it's all entangled. It's all connected. And so I believe this is the way that source, God, the universe, higher self, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, it's the way God experiences herself throughout eternity. It chooses to create other and experience itself through other, through forgetfulness, through amnesia, infinity or no time. That's another thing that science has shown. Time is an illusion, right? You are floating in eternity now. This moment, your 5th birthday party is happening on another channel. You're just not tuned into it. Your future birthday party is happening on another channel. And by the way, the future can affect the now the same way the past can, right? And so it's all happening in the infinite now. And it's all part of the same consciousness that is experiencing itself through this game called physicality. Like it's like a game of cat and mouse throughout eternity.
So do you think it's like, do you see Earth in like time and space as we experience it now as some kind of like boot camp? Because I've had mediums on that are like, it's kind of like the different levels and then you reincarnate and then there's different learnings. And it seems like this keeps coming up over and over again. So is that like, is source looking to experience itself through this little boot camp of life?
I think that's a great question. I believe that the physical dimension where it's a slower, lower, denser vibration than where we, when we were born here, and a part of us died to the place from whence we came, and vice versa. When you die here, you're born back into non-physical, right? So it's doorways really. And so this doorway called physical incarnation, and in this case on planet Earth at this, time, if you will, this construct called time, it is, there's a lot of positive and negative forces rubbing against each other in a way that creates an opportunity for the soul to grow that isn't as in expedites growth in a way that can't be experienced in the place from where we came, right? It's sort of it's a specialized place. So think about it like this. Let's say you wanted to be the most skilled sailor that's ever existed. And all you do is sail around your, pond in the back, the back of your neighborhood. That's, a block across. It's this calm pond, and versus the guy who goes to the roughest waters and experiences everything that nature can throw at it. And now 10 years of those two things, who's going to be the more skilled sailor? Smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor, and you came to be a skilled sailor. So this Earth school, as some people would put it, gives you the opportunity to sharpen your axe, level up your skills in a setting that allows for it to happen. It gives you the contrast and the context. I believe it's all happening for love, but without its opposite, it means nothing. Imagine being with the man or woman of your dreams tomorrow, like the ideal. Now imagine being with them for 1 billion years. You'd want to strangle them if you hadn't already 900 million years back. So it's that, or I think of my brother, for example, who he got arrested one time for not paying a ticket when he was in his early 20s. He didn't ever pay it. He got pulled over years later. They said, "You've got a warrant." They took him to jail. He's a very sensitive person. spent several days in jail. I picked him up after 3 days or so, midnight. They let him out at 12:01 so they could charge for another day. I take him home. I cook him a Hot Pocket. If you ask him to this day, what is the best meal you ever had? And he's had a lot of fancy meals. Guess what it is? It's that Hot Pocket. So this is the game that God is playing with itself. It is, I asked Neil when I had him on a few weeks ago, what was one of the most profound things that God shared with you? And those books, for those of you who don't know, Neil Donald Walsh was, homeless at one point in time. He had just lost his wife, his job, broke his back in an accident. He was writing angrily to God, like, why? What is this all about? And he started getting answers and recording them, and they're really profound, and it turned into be this huge bestseller, And I remember I asked him, what was the most profound things that you learned or were told in this process? He said, in the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. In the absence of that which you are not evil. In the absence of evil, that which you are, love, is not. Evil is live spelled backwards, right? So it's all happening as a tool for love to know itself. And that is a very powerful realization, I believe.
Wow. Okay. I feel like with a lot of these things, I'm going to have to sit with it for a little bit after, but I'm just going to go with the next question that I have, which is like, and this is very relevant. I just did a past life regression yesterday.
Oh, wow.
I've never done that before, and I didn't think I could do it. And I like opened my eyes in this meditation, and I'm in someone else's body. It was like very weird.
Wow.
With like black curly hair. And the weirdest part of this whole thing was, I felt like I had a little brother, and a medium told me very recently on the podcast, she channeled my spirit guides, and she said, your youngest son, I have 2 sons, your youngest son, you had a past life with him. He was your youngest brother, and you were in the, like basically some kind of foster care system. And you made a contract with him that said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be your mother, and we're going to have a beautiful life.
Wow.
So I had this experience yesterday, and this other medium was like, your youngest brother, they're showing you this life because you made a contract and you were going to come back and be his mother. I'm like, this came back. My skeptical brain always tries to disprove all this stuff, but this was a coincidence. And I saw it. I saw it and I felt it. And I'm like, so now that I'm just really thinking about this concept of past lives, but the fact that there is no past, right? This is the infinite.
Parallel lives would be in a more realistic way.
That's happening right now. But then I said we're going to come back, and
so relative truths, right? So 2 apparently contradictory things that are both true. We are in eternity now. This moment is always happening. You and I having this conversation. We happen to be tuned into it in this now moment, and we are experiencing it through the lens, the functional tool called linear time.
Oh my gosh. Wait, it just all clicked for me. Just like something you just said.
Yeah.
It's like watching a TV show. I'm like going to this channel, but they're all happening and we're just watching them.
That's right. From this moment forward, there are infinite versions of you. And this is where I always say your life plays out at the corner of free will and destiny. It's destined because it's already happened, right? Time is an illusion, right?
Every single possibility.
God is infinite and has infinite resources and no time, infinity on its side, right? So it plays out every possibility you can imagine and all the ones you can't, right? And so from this moment forward, there are infinite versions of each and every one of us, right? So many versions. Your aim is to experience the greatest and grandest version, right? That's where free will comes in. You get to choose with your vibration which one you'll step into, right? You're constantly shifting into different timelines. I just had the chance to also interview Bashar, if you're familiar with Bashar. He's a channel, incredible wisdom comes through him. And, he says we're shifting in and out of timelines constantly. so many
every
times.
millisecond.
Yeah, and think about it. You're made of light, like just like a movie screen. What are we made of? What particles of light that are flickering? The atoms that make me up. When we zoom in, they're not solid at all. They're 99.99999% space. The part that we call solid is really vibrations of energy popping in and out of existence so quickly. We don't know where they come from or where they go to. They're intelligent when they show up here. You're in a light show. You're in a holographic reality. This is your movie. This is your dream.
This is our movie. So let's talk about manifesting too, because, and I think this ties into the contrast and a little bit in this idea of, in order to experience the light and in order to experience joy, you have to experience the other side and know the dichotomy of it all, or the Buddhist like suffering for enlightenment. I have always felt at my core, I just want to create a life that I love. Is that okay? Like, why not just aim for love and happiness and peace? And yeah, there's going to be challenges along the way, but like, I don't want to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, we all are seeking not to suffer. And just to finish my thought from a moment ago, from this moment forward, there are infinite versions of reality for each and every one of us. Our aim is to step into the greatest and grandest version, the most rewarding version. Source has already been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt, right? Time is an illusion. So your job is to be it, to see it. Most people do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy. Be something like happy, and you'll find yourself doing and having the things that are a reflection of that. It's happening. There is no out there. Out there is showing up as a reflection of your vibrational state. So your aim is to be happy and to suffer as little as possible. But make no mistake, you want the contrast. At some level, you're doing a dance with your higher self. And your higher self, you're playing checkers, and your higher self is playing chess. It sees all the other lifetimes. It sees all the things that you can't. So you want to, with the dances, from your perspective, you want to do the very best you can based off the information you have. And then, as one of the keys in my book, trust the mystery. And then release. It's this or something better. Whatever happens is happening for my greatest good. Even if it's challenging, even if it hurts, even if it's painful. There's a silver lining. There's, what is a diamond? It's coal that held up really well under pressure, right? So you came to be a diamond, and sometimes that involves pressure. That's how growth and expansion happens. So you understand, I'm not actively seeking to put myself in harm's way, and I trust the mystery, whatever comes my way. The biggest thing that you can get in your life, I always say, is once you understand the life is happening for you, not to you, it's everything.
Then it does.
It's everything. Then it does. Well, it's neutral even by design. So how you see things determines how they actually ripple for you. It's all like neutral in a sense. You color it with the story you tell and the energy you give it.
And I think this, I've maybe always understood like subconsciously, and the way I've practiced it is just like, well, when I feel good, good things tend to happen. And when I set my vision for what I want to create and I believe it's going to happen, it happens. And it's like a very simplistic way of thinking about this. I would love to hear your thoughts on manifestation. And I think especially for people who are not, maybe not like totally happy or fulfilled, and they have a vision and are doing all the things, and it's like not working.
Well, here's a big part of this. When you've made it so that your happiness, first off, we didn't come to always be happy. We came to experience a full range of emotions that aren't necessarily experienceable in the safe pond of the life on the other side. And so you came to feel it all, right? And so certainly we love to be happy. We enjoy being happy. We seek to be happy, but understand it's not, if you were always happy, once again, the Hot Pocket, right? That Hot Pocket was very delicious because of the contrast, right? And so what you can do all the time is be at peace. You can be at peace with what is. And so once you start aiming, this maybe isn't what I'm choosing, but I can be at peace with it. I had a guest on my podcast years ago. His name was Derek Rydall, and his story stuck with me. It was such a good one, such a good example of what you're talking about. He was an actor. He had some level of success. He now has hit hard times. He's needing to go to wait tables. He felt like it was very below him. He's a hyper intelligent guy, He's waiting tables on his former peers, ashamed, embarrassed, And then it occurs to him, if I'm here, I must be here for a reason. And if while I'm here, I'm going to be the best waiter that ever could be. I'm going to do it to the absolute fullest, because I realize you're exactly where you need to be as a springboard to the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. Source has never made a mistake. It is infinitely intelligent and divine. So wherever you are, it's because you're meant to be there, and it's the perfect spot for you to lead to where you're meant to go next. Now, the good news is, if you don't like it, change is guaranteed. And by the way, if you love something, you better appreciate it, because change is guaranteed, right? And so always fully showing up in the now, understanding that, okay, like he did, he said, okay, I'm going to be the best darn, waiter that's ever lived. And he was so good, he started like kind of showing up his superiors. He actually, they ended up firing him because he was making everyone else look bad, in a sense. And he went from, doing this, he passed the test, essentially. So he vibrationally put himself out of that job. Within a month later, he found himself through synchronicity and serendipity and the spiritual breadcrumbs that inevitably arise in our lives when we are maintaining our highest potential vibration. He's on a private jet, headed somewhere. Now he's the teacher and coach and big successful story. And so the path to get to where you want to go isn't by resisting where you're at. It's by fully showing up where you're at. What you resist persists. What you accept, you move through. And so when you start to understand, you're perfectly primed. It doesn't mean it's your forever spot. It means once you get the lesson wherever you're at, that whatever is hard about it, whatever, it falls away. The universe is efficient. It's seeking growth and expansion, not to repeat a lesson you already learned.
Do you think that anyone from any walk of life, from anywhere in this world right now, can manifest anything that they put their mind to?
Yes and no. Yes, at the highest possible, the potential. Another thing that he talked about was the law of emergence versus the law of attraction. The law of attraction is saying there's something out there that I want to attract in. The law of emergence, it's already within me, right? If the little boy finds an acorn on the side of the river bed and takes it and puts it on a shelf in the room, it never becomes an oak tree. If he plants it deep into the ground on the side of the river and it gets all the rain, wind, air, everything that it needs, then what comes out of the little acorn? An oak tree. So if you create the right conditions, then what the oak tree within you is inevitably going to emerge. And by the way, they've done an experiment where they took trees and put them in what they thought was the perfect environment, and they kept dying, and they couldn't figure out what the problem was. And they finally realized there's no wind to cause them stress and strain and to make the root strong. And so it actually needed that in order to live. And so, yes, it's the potential. Everyone is an acorn. Will everyone step into that? Will they tell the stories? Will they do, certainly I think there's some lifetimes. So when you see someone who's like, they're so far from realizing their oak tree potential, they're in a lifetime where that isn't necessarily the agenda. The agenda is to come and experience homelessness and die of drug addiction, or we judge that as wrong, as if we can see the soul's agenda in the full gamut of what it's experienced, right, and what it wants to call in, so that it can have the contrast that is necessary.
Do you think that there are accidents?
No, I don't think there's ever been an accident in all of eternity.
Not even like
you can call it an accident. I don't believe anything has, and this is controversial, and I understand why. I don't believe there's ever been a victim. I don't believe there's ever been an accident. I believe source is absolutely perfect. If you could see the web of perfection of everyone and every being getting exactly what it has signed a contract and wanted to experience, you would weep at the beauty and perfection of the tapestry that's being woven. And I understand also how challenging
Yeah.
that could be from someone
Yeah.
not, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying if something awful happened to me or my family or loved one, or I see it on, in the, what just happened with these people in the sub that, we found out
Yeah.
as of today
Yeah.
recording that imploded. Like, wow, their poor families, and what a
Yeah.
horror from one perspective. From one perspective, it's an accident. From another, I believe
Yeah.
it's a perfectly executed soul contract.
But what about, so I understand we're all one, but yet we're also divided, and there are different souls, right, that come and experience different soul experiences, all
Mhm.
these different channels. Or um do you believe there are newer souls and older souls? And then who creates the newer souls? Like, why are,
Mhm.
like, is source just being like, we need some new souls in there? Or like, what?
I think it's a recycling kind of there's a great book called Journey of Souls,
Mm,
in Destiny of Souls. There are two books, and the author spent 40 years. Michael Newton was his name. Spent 40 years doing past life regressions, and then when the person would die in the lifetime, you go, okay, now what? And he started getting their experiences, life between lives, and seeing all the parallels of what people reported. And he's a very scientific, PhD, like he kind of recorded, here's the structure from the other side. Or yeah, and one of the things he talks about is this sort of nursery of souls. So once again, eternity is a long no time. So think in terms of that. At some point, there's some level of is it new from one perspective? Yes. From another perspective, it's the same energy recalibrating itself to experience the game of physical incarnation
and you
again,
think
if you will.
infinite lives, or like a certain number of lives? And then, because I've had mediums on that talk about this, a soul's evolution is once you go through all your levels, then you become a spirit guide, or um then become an angel, and all these different realms, and then there's the masters and ascended masters.
Mhm.
Like, do you see it that way too?
Yeah, I do. I think there's all sorts of, and that's sort of how he sees it um, in his recording and reporting, if you will. Yeah, that it's very much levels, but not in a hierarchical way, as in they're better, because it's all the same energy experiencing
Yeah.
itself through different lenses. So, and they say the one source God comes from the void, so comes from springs forth from nothingness. And to wrap your brain around that concept is like,
No.
you can't. So
No.
I don't pretend to know. I have my ideas of exactly how it works, and um once again, imagine going all the way through to go from the newest soul to the most ascended master. Okay, maybe you then say, okay, I've had enough being ascended a master for this infinite amount of time. Now I want to experience the journey again, but a different path this time, in a
Yeah.
different trajectory. And so in that sense, it's be a new soul, and yet it's not.
So, and this is, sorry, this is like a crazy question, and maybe like a weird question too, but like beginning, like dinosaur times, like, are we talking about souls experiencing that? Like, what, or is that also just
It's
like a
all
construct? Like, what?
that's
To,
I think life. Maybe I cut you off. Sorry.
well, I think maybe this also, I had a note to ask you about the simulation theory too. Maybe this relates a little bit.
Yeah. I think all everything is source and everything is alive. So, I mean, plants we know have a consciousness and communicate, and now they're understanding it's way more advanced than we originally thought. And so it's, source once again is infinite in its scope, and it wants to experience so many different perspectives. And I think part of the journey that it probably set up for itself is through the animal kingdom. Or another great guest that I had on my podcast years ago was Dr. Evan Alexander, and he is
Oh my gosh, you interviewed him?
Yeah, he was incredible. So the Harvard neurosurgeon, he got
Yes,
meningitis.
Proof of Heaven was his book, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So his brain, here's a Harvard brain specialist. One day he's fine. The next day his brain is fried by this rare form of meningitis. And after a week, they said, sorry, he's gone. His brain is fried, pull the plug, and he miraculously came back. And what all he remembered at first when he came back was his experience on the other side and what he was shown, and what he, part of it, he started in this earthworm realm where he was there for some, extended, time. A lot of times people say, like with near-death experiences and those sorts of things, it's like a very different, they could be gone 5 minutes and feel like they're gone 5 years,
And he's with his sister too, right? Reconnected with his sister he didn't know he had.
I don't recall that piece of it, but doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just that doesn't ring a bell for me. It's been a while too.
Okay.
So he experienced like sort of this earthwormy experience. He was this very simple organism that had no concept of anything beyond itself, and then sort of evolved through that and from that. And
well, I remember with that book, like he went and he said he'd never felt so much love before. Like he had never felt or experienced that kind of love. I think his sister went, this angel was guiding him through, and it was a dark-haired woman, and he didn't know who it was, but like a year later he was at his parents' house and saw a picture of her, and it was
I remember the woman. You remember getting guided by a woman. I didn't recall the part that
he didn't know it was his sister, but it was his real sister.
Wow, what a trip.
Yeah.
It's these things are, he talked about how a lot of times the villains in your story are often your best friends on the other side, and they play these roles so you can have the experience. Like my favorite book from Neil Donald Walsh is a children's book called The Little Soul in the Sun. And it's all about a soul having this crazy idea in eternity, in this perfect environment of wanting to experience forgiveness. But what to forgive, who to forgive. And another soul steps forward and says, I love you so much, I'm willing to lower my vibration, forget myself, become awful to do this thing so that you can have the experience of forgiveness. But in that moment, I will have forgotten myself. And all I ask is that you remember me as I am here now, or else you may become lost too, and we'll both stay lost for a very long time. And that book, I think every child from 9 to 99,
I'm getting it.
You should get. Oh yeah, for sure. It's incredible, and I think it tells the story of humanity and what we're doing here. And once you understand, and I share in my own book, The Golden Key, my hero's journey tale of the villain in my story was my best friend, who I started a company and gave him equity in it, and then he ended up trying to take it from me, and this big betrayal, and then 6 years later, we hadn't talked, and I walked away. And the day I hit print on my book, he calls me, and it's like, I know, I answer. My partner at the time, well, still my partner, she's like, answer. And so I answer because I know you probably don't want to talk to me or hear from me, but I've been on this intense spiritual journey, and I've changed completely. And my intuitive friend said something about us writing a book together, and I had just submitted mine hours earlier. And I'm like, well, I just submitted mine, and you're the villain in my hero's journey tale, but it's all divine design. Now we're closer than ever. He's completely a different person. His baby mama and grandmother both have my birthday. It's my dad's birthday, my great grandmother's birthday. My great died on that day. I met a soulmate on that day. Her ex-partner committed suicide on that day. His name was Anson. All my relatives are from Anson, North Carolina with that birthday. It's all reflections. It's all connections. It's all divinely orchestrated.
This reminds me of like maybe the moth, the signs and synchronicities. You got that moth came to you because maybe your spirit guides or whoever wanted you to believe or see but then you never have experienced it again. And I've had certain moments like this because I'm still, even though I'm deep in all this stuff, there's this skeptical side of me that
Sure.
just won't go there. And there have been like, I asked for a sign recently, and right then a car pulled forward and there was 333, and I'm like, that's so random. But then I've asked
Hmm.
for more signs and I don't get it. And it's
Hmm.
like, I'm like, please, spirit guides, I just really give me a sign this time, because I really want to believe that I'm being guided and that you're
Hmm.
there and that I want to connect with you. And I've tried so much, Brandon, to connect with my guides. I don't know if I don't have the gift. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I've tried with meditation. It's not coming through.
Mm.
So I'm like, I see signs and synchronicities, but then my brain talks myself out of it and is like, well, that's just random. That's just a
Well,
coincidence.
one thing that I'm hearing in your voice as you explain all that is there's a certain amount of desperation and attachment to it.
Yeah, no, I
So
know.
um, the real trick to manifestation, I found, and I teach best what I most need to learn as well. We all struggle with these sorts of things. Is you can have the intention and the desire for whatever it is you want, and then release it.
Yeah,
You don't need it to be
no.
fulfilled, to be happy, to, I think, at your deepest core, know that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And so your attachment to, once you let it go, then I think you'll have it.
Yeah.
And so, and that's you set the intention and let it go. The I must have, I need it, that energy pushes it away.
But
And
why do you think that with the moth,
mhm,
it's
I,
not like you're desperate for a moth to fly in your
I
hands
was, and I was
again?
wide open.
But why not
There wasn't a bunch
now?
of triggered energy around it. I think I got, because once again, now I'm chasing it. I was in a particular state at a particular moment. I was
Okay.
particularly,
You
like,
just get what you need in the
you get
moment.
what you need in the moment. You always get what you need,
And
and you
yeah.
got to be able to let the rest go. And it's in letting go that you can have everything. It's the irony.
So do you think for my soul's evolution right now, for this journey, all of this, you being on this podcast now, all of like, because I don't think I would have been ready for a conversation with you a year ago or
Mhm.
2 years ago. So is this also all orchestrated by the spirit guys, like what
You
I
got it.
need, and it's going to continue?
You get exactly what you need when you need it, all in divine timing. I wouldn't have, I can only show up if I'm a close enough vibrational match to you out of 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet for us to share this moment. Means we're such a close vibrational match. Here I am, and you've created me in this image as this character. I'm a prop in your movie. You're the lead director, actor in your own
And
private
I'm a
universe.
prop in your movie.
Yeah, that's right. Of course you make it. Of course, I'm the one. You're the one too. It's like, and so I think a lot of people on their spiritual journey fall into that spiritual narcissistic. I am the one. Yes, you are, but just
Yeah.
chill. So is everyone and everything else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you can't attract that which is like unto itself is drawn. Water seeks its own level. So for us to have this experience, if you think of source as an infinite tree expanding infinitely in all directions, right? Beyond what our mind can even imagine. And yet there will be a branch with leaves on it right next to each other, flapping in the winds of eternity. And that's what this is in this moment. And it's a beautiful thing to realize. We reincarnate in soul families or soul groups or soul pods, like your son. You've been with him before.
And my
And
husband,
so,
I've apparently been in like thousands of lives with
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. So that's sort of a typical thing is these people that you're most connected to show up again and again, in your movie. So
And we all choose it. This was a choice.
yes.
This, like, yeah, which is just, I mean, I could talk to you for days and days and days and days and days. And I actually want to cut, you were just describing before we started recording this like mystic spot you have in Venice. Can you
Yeah,
first
yeah.
share how people can connect with you, what you've got going on in your life? You mentioned your book. I want to hear about your book, but also this
Sure.
place in Venice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the Mystic Manor, we call it. It's in Los Angeles area. It's sort of a hub for conscious community. We do It started out originally, so I've done a podcast for going on 9 years called Positive Head. 9 months or so before COVID, I moved in. Actually, I'm coming up on the 4-year anniversary at the Mystic Manor in a week or so. July 1st, 2019, we moved in there, and the idea was to have a place big enough to host retreats. So fans of the podcast could come and spend a week on retreat. And then the last night we'd curate their whole week for them. And then the last night we would film a late night style consciousness centric talk show. We filmed 17 episodes of it called Optimistic.
Oh, cool.
Like spelled MYSTIC, and I do an opening monologue, and there'd be visionary artists live painting, and we talk about their piece. And
is this
then an interview?
Was Sahara?
Sahara Rose was
Sahara Rose was on it. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, if you go to optimistic.tv, you can check out the first 4 episodes. There's actually still some we haven't released. COVID kind of threw a wrench in. We were doing retreats and filming, and then it's like, and then me being kind of squirreling on something else, then I started writing my book, and that's called The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. And I actually set it up in a unique way where you can gift. I'm happy to give a gift of audio and or ebook to people. Yeah, if you go to goldenkey.gift and you use the code LOVE, LOVE, you can get the audio and or ebook. So, yeah. And other than that, the Mystic Manor and Positive Head podcast and the Golden Key and Optimistic, and I also have a travel company called Hello Vacay. It's doing some cool stuff. So kind of serial entrepreneur.
I love it. And I have one last question for you, because I can only imagine that, like, for you having been just entrenched in this work and really believing it, and I can only imagine that helps with like things like anxiety and minor worries and stuff when you kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture. Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe struggling a little bit right now and want to connect with spirituality or some belief that's going to help ease that, and maybe just like help them start creating a life that feels really good?
Yeah, great question. So what I would like to offer to everyone listening, first off, you can't hear these words unless you are a vibrational match for them. And the truth of the situation in which you find yourself, you are as worthy as any other being ever has been, could be, or will be, because it's all you. You are it. You are perfectly imperfect. All your bumps, bruises, shadows, things you're ashamed of, that's all perfectly orchestrated and designed to help lead you into the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. And there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's nothing that you have to do. As Ram Dass put it, at the end of the day, we realize we're all just sitting around the fire together for eternity. And so you are it. You are worthy by virtue of your existence. And there's nowhere to go, nothing to do. You have already arrived. And so once you can relax about the proving your worth or getting somewhere other than here, this moment is as divine as any other moment ever has been, could be, or will be as well. So this is it. Every moment, look for the beauty in it. Bring the beauty to it. Bring your awareness to it. Be in it fully. And if you don't like it or prefer it to change, how can you be in it fully and bring the light to it, right? And you want to see your life transform, try that approach. Instead of, how do I get somewhere by doing something out there? There is no out there. It's like the video game. As you walk through and you choose to go left or right, the screen propagates in front of you as you turn, and it's like, oh, let's show them this, make it appear. I mean, you can look at this idea, the double slit experiment in physics shows this. Like, when consciousness is observing a particle, it's in one spot. When it's not observing, it's in a state of quantum superposition, all these possibilities at once. So as you turn your precious attention anywhere, be it fully, be there fully, show up fully. And if you want something to change, it's all changing from within. And no one is more worthy than you. If you ever have believed otherwise, it's just you didn't understand who you truly are.
That's it. It's being okay with where you are and in your mind, knowing that you can create where you're going.
And you already did. It's
You
already
already
happened.
did. Everything.
Sources already,
Yeah.
it's all already happened. You just are catching up to it. You be it to see it. You
Ugh.
don't chase it. You
Yeah.
you be the energy of it now and watch things transform.
Love it. Thank you so much, Brandon. This was really so invaluable, so much to think about. And I'm so grateful that we were vibrationally aligned today.
Me too. Me too. Our
Thank
soul
you so much.
contract is fulfilled for this
Yes,
episode.
here we
Until next
go.
time.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, Brandon.
Bye for
Have a
now.
good one.